Hero Club presents Los Ingobernables de Tokusatsu.
Welcome to Los Ingobernables de Tokusatsu, episode 95. I'm your host, Wheelchair21, and I'm also your co-creator. However, the other co-creator has been MIA practically for like the last 30-something episodes, plus probably, if I recall correctly. I don't really know what her project is. I don't know what he really does, but his new job kicks the crap out of him when it's usually time to record. We also have Gender Joker, who also got the crap kicked out of him due to his other job. So then it just leaves us down to number 4, the new number 1, my second in command, Sound Out Frickin' 12.
And I recently applied for a job and had a very successful interview, so you should get scared.
Yes, but I shouldn't be too scared, since we already know the working hours are 9 to 5, well, it's really 9 to 6 at your job, but it doesn't actually impede usually most of our recording times, since it's usually around 10 to 12 at night when we actually can get on at those times, even though lately now it's been around 12 to 1. But luckily we're not shooting in those times where we were doing 2 to 4. So we're still shooting at a good time where it's possible to get everything done. And if we have to move it on weekends, like we did for this specific episode, since we are shooting in midst New York Comic Con, which we will actually do a show on New York Comic Con and other non-tokusatsu things next week. Like, we will do tokusatsu in the next episode.
But I'm going to talk about Star Wars a lot.
And I'm going to be talking about Transformers a lot. Well, actually, both of us will be talking specifically about one in particular that still grinds our gears. Anyways, though...
And I'll be talking about Dr. Doom for a solid 45 minutes.
No, you won't. I will stop you with the rake. Anyways, for tonight, if I do recall correctly, a couple of episodes ago, we did this series called Lupinranger vs. Patranger, the complete series review. And at the time, the summer movie was just getting subbed, and the Versus movie with Kyuranger wasn't actually out yet until then. Like, right after we aired the episode, I think the Blu-ray dropped, and then they were like, yo, the subs are coming soon. But then they came out like an entire month and a half later. But nevertheless, they were both provided technically through TV Nihon. However, with the movie, I think that one was exclusively released through their scrub group, Pocket Universe. So overall, they were at the common core for these releases if you didn't know that they were already out. And so we're going to actually try to close out our LuPat. This is the first time I think we've actually gone back and did the movies for said shows, like shortly after they came out. We haven't done it for Build. And I don't think we did it for some of the other series we've done that have recently aired. Hell, I don't think we've done it for some of the series that we've done in the past except for Garo, since those seasons are a lot shorter. We'll eventually probably be doing that when we start addressing the Ultraman franchise, since at least when they're on Blu-ray here in North America, you get your 25-episode season and you get the movie. So we'll see how that works out, especially since Ginga has like 2. Nevertheless, though, we got the first movie. I almost said Transformers. Fuck you, Unicron. We have our first movie. Kaito Sentai Lupinranger versus Keisatsu Sentai Patranger and film, which for this part, SoundOut's going to provide at least a good synopsis of our 25-minute film.
So, the basic plot of this film features Sherlock Sholmes, a character that appeared in the Arsène Lupin novels as a knockoff Sherlock Holmes. And so he's been transferred over here, says he's going to investigate the Lupinranger specifically. As we're going through the story, we also learn of Wilson, who is a gangler that seems to be running something similar that needs to be investigated by good old Noel, who has his couple of scenes where he appears, fights Wilson, then just leaves for the rest of the movie because they filmed it before his debut or something, I don't know. Sentai films are weird, especially the summer ones with their Six Rangers. However, continuing forward, considering the overall film, it's a little bit light on story, but you do get some nice stuff as eventually turns out that Sherlock Sholmes is actually working for the Ganglers and is a disguise, and it ends up leading Lupin Red and Patron Ichigo both getting stuck in the Gangler world and meeting a Lupin collection piece named the Jackpot Striker, who is the ability to control Ganglers using their safes, which is actually kind of cool. And overall, the film kind of continues from there, leading to a great action sequence inside of the Gangler's mansion to try to get back to the human world, and using Jackpot Striker to control Gosh to get them back. And once they're back, the two teams unite for the first time formally in continuity, and they work together to take down the Ganglers. And in a cool twist of fate, the Jackpot Striker, much like how the Good Striker can allow the Patrangers to combine to become Patra and Yugo, the Jackpot Striker allows the Lupinrangers to form Lupin Tricolor, and the two together end up facing off against Wilson. And they also leads to a nice mecha battle where we have Lupin Kaiser, now as Lupin Kaiser Rex using Jackpot, and Pato Kaiser fighting alongside each other, which is pretty awesome because it's the only time I think we have in the series of the main two mecha getting to work together at the same time without being a combination like VSX. And it's actually kind of neat to see the two teams working together on something specifically for the first time, which I think was kind of the whole point of the film, was kind of getting the teams together, exploring the gangler world a little bit, and just having a little bit of fun in the nice little summer movie.
Yeah, that synopsis is pretty sound because while it is a summer film, it means it's only going to be around 22 minutes to 26 minutes long because summer films are only around the amount of an episode, which is a shame because sometimes summer movies for Sentai deserve to get a full-fledged 40-minute, almost TV movie run or even a actual full theatrical run. And that does kind of suck due to the fact that there have been some stories that either are so rushed, there is no story, and it's like, hey, look at this new product you can go buy in our stores. And then other times you get this new product that you can go buy in our stores, but an actual good, concise story. This is one of those ones where the story, yes, it was a little too cut, copy, and paste kind of scenario where it's very straightforward with you, but at least when you watch it, it feels like it gives you a real conclusion. It gives you a real setup because there's a point, like Soundout says, when they have their standoff in the actual mansion of the Ganglers, there's the whole point where they actually capture Gosh and they almost go and get her binoculars from her. And I'm like, how are they going to write this one out of the plot in hindsight, knowing what happens throughout the rest of the series already? And then they find a funny way of going, we didn't grab the binoculars at that time because we had to get out of the mansion because we used Gosh to escape. And then Gosh just goes back and they hand her back the binoculars. So it's end of story. So it's one of those ones of when you see the show, you try to figure out how did they write themselves out of this situation. And it worked perfectly fine. I think that's one of the good things about some summer films is in the past, they were either subbed right after the movie came out or there was a point in that movie where it's then abridged in the TV show. So you don't need to actually worry about seeing the film right away. So in this case, it worked perfectly since they didn't actually go, hey, remember that time we went to the mansion? Remember that time we fought Herlock Sholmes? And they were like, no. So they were like, we're going to pretend that just kind of didn't exist. But then Jackpot Striker shows up at the last minute save of the entire series and was like, hey, did you guys see the movie? No? Too bad on you. So that's what I actually like this time is that this movie makes you kind of need to see it in some regards because Jackpot doesn't even get a specific episode to himself until the finale of Lupinranger vs. Patranger, which was one of the smartest things ever, I think, which then also added to the high demand of the character is because he didn't really get an episode, I think, just like the Kirano mecha from Kyuranger, the Kiraberos. That's one thing
Kiraberos never even appeared.
Yeah, I think they're like two of the only Sentai movie mechas to not really get a Sentai episode dedicated to them or a two-parter dedicated to them lately. Because most of the time they get it. Most of the time.
It was also Galaxy Line from Tokuger didn't get one either.
Oh yeah, so okay, it's three of them at least. Three of them.
Yeah, at least three. Yeah, because Ninjas came back.
Yeah, he's came back a couple of times. He came back even in other movies.
Oh, Geodgers came back only in the Returns movie, but not in the series.
Yeah, okay. So the last couple of years they've actually been being good with that. So that's pretty smart. I do like that. I think there was a lot of good choreography. I think there was a lot of good fights. And I think the actual ganglers for this movie were some of the best design ganglers for your typical sense monsters of the week, even though they're supposed to be movie villains. So yeah, they're a little bit cooler than the rest. But I feel like these suits could have been actual generals we could have seen in the show just by their design alone. They looked really nice. They looked really cool. I really liked them. And I thought the CG was pretty stellar. It wasn't the best for the movie. I don't know. Just like the movie budget for the CG just looked not all there when we've seen better CG before. Maybe it's just because they've been using that style of CG throughout the entire season thus far, that when you watch it, it just looks the same as it does in the show, so it doesn't feel as special anymore. So
it does blend with the show nicely, but it doesn't stand out as something amazing.
Yeah, so overall, that's my 2 cents. It's a nice film. I think it goes a little too quick. It does get to its point rather easily. So it's one of those ones where it could have actually gone with an extra maybe 5-10 minutes for a director's cut, and it wouldn't feel like it's just skimming over plot points. It feels like there's just a few moments where it could have had a breather. this one, while it was a good film, it needed maybe a few minutes to breathe. And I felt like that was my only issue with it, was like a lot of stuff happens. Even though nothing truly happens, it just feels like it needed maybe a few moments of pause, but there weren't that many, if I recall. It was just like, hey, there's Kairi and Ichigo having their bromance in the woods by a fire. There's the teams. We have to find a way to get them back. But there was no other pauses except the moments when the Reds were taken away from their significant teams. That's about it. That's really all I can say. I overly enjoyed it. What's your take on the overall 25-minute film?
I think this is really nice because it's just like a nice little side story for the two teams. It's not anything groundbreaking, anything major, but it's kind of fun to watch it because it's so short, and it kind of like encapsulates a lot of the elements of Lupinranger versus Patranger. I think Jackpot Striker is a really fun mecha to have. I'm also kind of glad he only appeared briefly in the show, but he did have a significant plot significance to it, which is pretty awesome. So it's pretty cool because they kind of encapsulated everything great about the series, boiled it down to a nice little 25-minute movie, and seeing the teams work together is great. I think if I had been in charge of some decisions in the movie, I probably would have just not used Noel and instead just had him just not appear in the movie and have this take place before he showed up. Because it just felt like, I think that was one of the biggest problems, is that he was there and then just vanished for the entire thing. He wasn't even there for like a wrap-up scene from what I remember. So that kind of sucks because this was like after he debuted, so he should have had a little bit better of a presence. But I really do enjoy the movie, and it's kind of fun to see how everything worked together.
Yeah, I'm thinking about it now, that you're right, he was kind of in there just to be like, oh, hey, look, he's a gangler, and that's all he was really there for, was to be like, this guy here is a bad guy, don't trust him, he's no real person, it's a gangler in disguise. And that's kind of stupid. We could have literally done, like you said, it after him. But then again, when this movie came out, I don't think it would have worked in initial planning. It would have been one of those weird situations of just release versus airing time. So I think that was the significant problem. It's not like with, if I recall, the Kyuranger one. The Kyuranger one legitimately takes place like right as I think Tsurugi debuts. So that's how it kind of plays into it, if I recall.
Yeah, because like Tsurugi's debut in the Kyuranger movie came out like almost the same time.
So it was one of those easy playoffs. It wasn't like where we've had him for a few weeks and we've seen his mecha. But in this case, it was like, no, here's Tsurugi. And then like after that episode airs, it's like, we also got the mecha now, if I recall. I could be wrong. Yep. I haven't seen all of Kyuranger in a while to remember the pacing. But that's what it felt like when I saw the movie. Because I know it either came out right before he showed up or right when he showed up. So it didn't have that weird inconsistent moment. So I think it's a decent movie. People should check it out. Just, you won't find it, I think, on the basic TV Neon site. You gotta go over to Pocket Universe's website or find it on the torrent that they have. So check that out. Our next movie, though, is the Super Sentai Returns special kind of thing, mixed in with our Super Sentai Versus special as a V-Cinext. The V-Cinext is a new thing that Toei's been recently doing. They've started doing it with the Space Squad films, and the way that V-Cinext works is that they will get a theatrical run right about the time the Blu-ray either releases or right before the Blu-ray releases for these direct-to-DVD home video releases. And in this case, we have it that the Lupinrangers and the Patrangers are probably, I want to say, in the late 30s to early 40s. This is way before they go into the final arc. And because time works really weird in the Kyuranger universe, we know that their team up with Kyuranger is before the epilogue of their series, as well as their reintroduction to this universe with the Space Squad film. Because to not go too far into the plot without explaining the plot from start to finish, things don't fully line up, as in, at this time, Shoran Po is still the commander, Stinger has not been promoted yet, and the team doesn't seem as so dispersed like they are by your epilogue and by Space Squad. So, the film kind of starts out with Lupinrangers coming back from grocery shopping, and honestly, they end up getting held up by the great pop star portrayed by Beatbuster / Maggiello. Yeah, he's back, the greatest star of the Kyuranger universe. He somehow ended up in this universe, and he's now broke, and he tries to pretty much take them at knife point as hostages to get money. This is where things get kind of interestingly weird, because he actually has a guitar from Donamage that is a WMD that Donamage's new form, Donakage, is looking for in this universe. So he's teamed up with some of the ganglers, and they've given him a Gangler of the Week to work with him to recover his WMD, so he can go back to ruling his universe while taking this universe over as well with the ganglers. Like, they perform some kind of peace treaty kind of thing. And so, well, the Patrangers are trying to get back the Lupinrangers, and the big star of Kyuranger is trying to get some money just so he can live. Donakage and the Ganglers go to try to screw everything over and get their Versus vehicle in the exchange, as well as the weapon, which then leads to, at this time, Gold and Silver showing up from Kyuranger and teaming up with them. So, at this point, Habitsu Sky and Tenbin Gold are messing around with the whole thing, because they're going back to their conniving, thieving waves, because they're like, well, if we can get WMD, and we can get you guys to freedom, we can all work together, why don't we just screw over the Patrangers? And they're like, yeah, this is a great idea. However, in the case of the Patrangers, they have Lucky and Tsurugi helping them, while supposedly Hammy, Spada, and Stinger are lost on our world. So they're trying to all regroup, not knowing that all the members of the Kyurangers are sort of effing up the entire base plan until they all converge during the exchange to get back, obviously, the Lupinrangers, who are the hostages, which then they steal the Versus vehicles so they can become the Patrangers to try to defend themselves in the trade-up. They get the weapons, they go to try to recover the weapons with the Kyurangers, they team up, the Patrangers team up with the other members of the Kyurangers, and they finally all converge on this one location, which is the typical Toei rock quarry. And as they're getting ready to fight, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Misao shows up and is like, I don't care what's going on. I heard some explosions, I didn't know where my team was, and I'm here to fight. Let's do this thing. And they're like, who the hell is this guy? So the Kyurangers, the Patrangers, and the Lupinrangers are all there, because the rest of the team shows up, and then all of a sudden, Jewel of the World's just there, like, on, let's do this thing. And they're just in awe and shock, because they, like, literally don't know who he is, because the Jewelers have not really crossed over with anyone in a while, that everyone's just like, no, seriously, who are you?
On top of that, let's remember this takes place before Super Sentai Strongest Battle, so Sting hasn't even met Yamato yet.
Yeah.
Literally nobody knows who Misao is and has no relation to the Zyuohgers.
Yeah, none of this has happened yet, so no one knows what's going on. And Donakage and the new Gangler threat, or the new Gangler of the week, are just like, alright, let's fight. So they have this amazing good battle. And when I mean good, it's not the greatest, but it's really spectacular, because Donakage, because he has the ability of Donamage, because they're technically the same person, resurrects his three main generals that were formerly portrayed by Buster Yellow, Denji Green, and Mega Blue. Like, they were the voice of the three monsters, and they work together to fight all of your teams. And this leads to them using most of their power-ups. I think only a few exceptions are made when it comes to the Kyurangers. Like, we don't see Sun and Moon, we don't see Pegasus Armor, we don't see Habetsu Sky Metal, we don't see Stinger's upgrade, but we see basic Shishi Red Orion, we see the Super Lupin Red, we don't see the Siren Striker used, and then we get Patranger Yugo. We get all those, and they just bombard Akage, which then leads to them doing their mecha battle, where they use VSX, they beat him, and then the teams kind of sort of get along, which lead to a very awkward standoff in your post-credits scene when they do the actual Kyutama dancing scene, which is like the funniest thing ever. So overall, all the teams work together, they get the job done, and then we go into our final arc of actually the series Lupinranger vs. Patranger. So Soundout, what's your take on this film?
So, as somebody that really loved LuPat and Kyuranger, this movie was a blast for me. Just the character interactions, seeing all the characters again. It kind of made me realize I did kind of like the idea of the Versus movie being post-series, because then it wasn't just like, oh hey, here's the return of the previous series and you're still like enjoying the current team. But having like both teams on a comeback tour was really fun, because then it was kind of like a different feeling, like, oh, all of my old favorites are coming back, not just like, oh hey, it's that last team from last year kind of thing. So that was really enjoyable, and I liked a lot of the team ups, like the BN themes, the Phantom Thieves, and it's just all kinds of cool, like, character interactions was a big thing. You know, a lot of the comedy was really well done. There was just some cool stuff, like the Lupinrangers becoming the Patrangers briefly. Like, that was pretty cool. The big final change was insane with all 20 Rangers there. And I think Misao was probably just there to make it an even number in the end. But I really enjoyed it. And I liked how we did get some mecha stuff, which sometimes doesn't happen with the Returns movies. So it did feel like a classic Sentai Versus movie, but being post-show kind of made it feel a little bit more special.
Yeah, for me, what I liked about this was, while it was filmed post-show to be set in-show, it made you still think it was a real Sentai Versus film, while it was actually being also billed as, like, the Return special. So the fact that they were able to take both concepts and do it accurately was really good, I think. Because, like you say, the interactions were sound. You take the thieves, and you put them with the thieves. You take Lucky, who's supposed to be the wild card who does whatever he wants, but being now serious, knowing that they defeated Amage, going, hey, I'm gonna play by your rules because we lived in a world where there were no rules kind of thing. It was just tyranny, so I did whatever the hell I wanted. So I need to prove to you guys I'm not a schmuck. And then Tsurugi just comes in and is like, he's not a schmuck. How can you vouch for him? I'm the president of another universe. Wait, excuse me? Yes. And then he just sits down in Hilltop's chair, and Hilltop's like, bruh. And he's like, I'm the president, diplomatic immunity. So that leads to some very hilarious stuff. Like, I love that scene where he just takes Hilltop's chair, and Hilltop's just like, but I do think, though, we did get a little bit of shafting. I think when it comes to shafting, I think most of it was that some of the human actors were already double booked with other shows or other obligations. Because, like, when you see how Hammy, Spada, and Stinger are, they're there, but, like, they get barely any screen time. And most of the time we get is their audio, even though they're supposed to be the human actors that are giving the most screen time. Whereas Oguma Sky Blue is brought in with the rest of the suit actors at the end because no one really cared about him to begin with. So they're like, no, you're part of the suits. But Tenbin Gold got to be here. Yeah, because he was relevant. Because he had Sky Silver carrying his ass for most of the damn show. So that's what I feel like was a good thing. At least the main players were the main feature for the Kyuranger team. And the B team were all the suits for once, except with Gold. And I liked how they worked perfectly. I do think, though, the only thing that felt weird was that they didn't actually show Donna Kage actually face off with the current team of villains, which were the Ganglers. Like, I wish we would have gotten to see Dogranio with him discussing stuff. I would like to have seen him just, like, have a scene where he sat down at the table and was like, I'm here to cut a deal with you, help me get my weird magical guitar back, and we can take over both universes. Like, I would have loved to have seen a legitimate, like, peace treaty be hashed out between Donna Kage and Don Dogranio. Like, it makes so sense. They're two mob bosses when you think about their names. So that's one thing I felt was rather lacking because I wanted to see Dogranio because I just love seeing that suit on screen. So we usually do get that in Sentai versus specials is like the current team's villain has to see whoever it is from the surviving team and going, yo, why are you here? I'm here to help you, fam, and not betray you. But this time they're like, nope, we don't even have the budget for all these voice actors. That's what it felt like, especially when we had, you know, the 3 villain generals of Amage show up and none of their voices were really there. I don't even think they even used archived audio for them, which was kind of funny, but I did like the fights. I did like the effects, and I think they pulled off a pretty good show in the extent of even the finale. Like, I forget how the full finale was until the credits, but it just felt accurate, and it tried to be sort of like that waypoint to connect, obviously, Super Sentai's Strongest Battle, as well as the Space Squad series. I also like how it is also a Super Sentai Returns sort of special, that the main Lupinranger, Patranger team at the end did do the typical, hey, we'll see you again someday kind of thing. So it fit everything you required to make this special feel special.
Yeah.
And I don't know what else they could have done to change it.
I think one of my favorite visual gags in this movie was at the end where you had, like, everybody just, like, having your post-fight meetup, and, like, Misao had, like, ran away in the middle of the fight by accident.
And he's just sitting there.
He's just sitting there looking sad, and no one ever goes over and says anything to him. He's just sitting there, and they're just running around him, and it's like, oh, he ran away, now he feels bad that he just left the middle of the fight.
I don't know why, but I feel like there should have been like an outtake where like someone just like thrust kicks in the back of his head and knocks him out. Like Garu just walks by, just kicks him in the head, like just knocks him down. Cause like the entire time Garu is just like, who is this man? Whose man's is this? Like, it would have been funny if he would have just, like, beat him up or something. I also find it funny, though, like, Shoran Po blows out his back in the fight, and, Lupin X is, like, flipping and just swirling around, and he's just, like, going, okay, so seriously, whose side are you on? As his back is all blown out, he's like, are you a friend or an ally? Cause, like, they're thieves. Yeah, well, what's the problem? No, seriously, who are you? Like, Shoran Po's, like, literally trying to figure him out the entire time, going, yo, have we met somewhere? What are you talking about? You remind me of somebody. The other interaction that makes no sense, but everyone was in love with it, was Raptor's hallucination.
Oh, God, it makes no sense, because she's never been to Juror, she never met anybody else.
Yeah, she's never been to Juror, she's never seen them without their helmets on. So she's like, oh, hey, I want to hang out with Sango and Umika. And then also there's Arisa Kayomi's character looking at them through the window wanting to join too. And I'm just like, okay, is Koichi Sakamoto high again? Is he snorting glue? Because every time you put Koichi Sakamoto in charge of like a V-Cinext, like, I just think he snorts like 3 lines of coke, hits himself with a thing of adrenaline, and then just rushes out there and just goes, let's do this thing! And they're like, but it makes no sense. But it's for the fans!
Probably.
But they're gonna question it. I don't care! That's literally what I feel like every time Koichi does something as crazy as this. Cause he's been doing that more and more, where he's just like loosely breaking fourth walls left and right, and he's like, I'm Deadpool! And they're like, bruh, if you don't calm down, we're sending you back to Subaraya.
Even worse, they'll send him back to Power Rangers.
But is that really a demotion when you got Judd Lin just doing crap?
Yeah.
But, I like this Versus special. The Versus special really did bring out a lot of cool elements that were necessary, and I enjoyed a lot of, like I said, the action, the fights, the comedy was actually well paced. It worked really well with 2 kind of upbeat shows that played well with their comedy real well, you know what I'm saying? It's not like other shows where the comedy overtook the show. It was one of those ones where it was like very tongue-in-cheek satirical. When watching Kyuranger and LuPat, was like, it didn't feel like when the comedy was forced in there, it didn't feel like it was too forced. It was just like, it felt natural.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I think because of Kyuranger and LuPat's comedy styles, they were very similar in a lot of ways. So it kind of flowed together, and instead of clashing like some other Versus movies will have, is where the 2 comedy styles will clash, this one kind of naturally worked with itself.
Yeah, that's literally what it felt like. I felt that it was done appropriately. And if we're gonna be doing the Versus and the Returns as one combination, I can't really disagree with it. What I would like to see, and this is just me personally, I would love to see a Versus special done similar to the Ginga Man versus Mega Ranger special, where it's filmed after the show, like it's filmed, instead of taking place during the final arc, it's legitimately like an epilogue movie. So this Returns is still a Returns for the team, but it still like carries their show's plot as well as ties up sort of stuff with the previous team's plot as well. Like, that would be cool for me, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
Because I'm sitting here and I'm like, I would love to see that. I think that would work a lot better, because a Versus team sometimes during a season's airing as like that winter film does throw off a bit of the show's mojo, because I remember watching Go-Unger's team up with, I think, Gekiranger, and there was a few things where I thought it was kind of questionable. Even also watching how, at the time, Gekiranger had their team up with Bokenger, it was also mildly questionable, because in the Gekiranger team up with Bokenger, that occurs supposedly before Long shows up, but then it releases during the final arc. So that one takes place like in the early 30s. Other Sentai Versus take place in the late 30s, early 40s. And this time, while it takes place in the 30s, because of LuPat's very episodic style, you could easily just put it in and it doesn't feel like it ultimately stands out as possibly being non-canon either.
Yeah, there's no real timeline issues. Like, I did a timeline breakdown of the film, and everything lines up. It's not like, sometimes when they go back and do retroactive, this took place during the series, but was made after. You can run into a few continuity glitches, especially with character progressions and developments, because it's after the fact. But overall, I don't know. It just seems like it fits, and it works, and it just flows into the state of the series.
Yeah, so overall, I like both. Throwing them in with LuPat as an overall series, I think, makes it a stronger show, actually, in some regards. Because once you have the context, like I said, of and film, you have a narrative, at least, of sort of who is Jackpot Striker. There's still not a lot on him compared to Goody's character, but there's enough to know more about him and be more acquainted with him when watching it in chronological order. With Lupinranger versus Patranger versus Kyuranger. I think it's a good series, but it really hopes that you don't watch the epilogue of Kyuranger, nor watch the Space Squad films or Super Sentai Strongest Battle if you're just a new fan watching the shows now, to venture in, since it takes place supposedly in that weird time lapse. And since Kyuranger time works so differently, it's really hard to establish how their time truly works, since it seems to work on a weird phase of it's supposed to be like 3 months or 3 years faster than our world. I don't remember how it works, but they state that time moves quicker. It's kind of like the whole 1 minute outside in the real world is like an entire year in the digital world kind of theory. That's how I did.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
You get what I'm saying?
always,
They use that trope with
yeah.
Toei. That's how the Kyuranger world works. Kyuranger world is like 1 minute in
You're-
our reality is like supposedly 3 months in their time.
It's really strange how that works, because the timeline on Kyuranger is kind of bizarre.
Yeah, because if they come to our universe, right, when they go back, even when they had the crossover with Gavin, be like, oh, we came back, and should have been like, yo, you guys been gone for like 6 months, and it got worse. What? That makes no sense. I don't see how that truly works. So I feel like there's gonna be something that changes that series' timeline retroactively. It's like when we get further and further along, and we get like a season like Gokaiger again, they're gonna say, oh, now that the timeline works evenly, and everyone's gonna be like, no, it doesn't. Like anyone who's actually seen the show.
Yeah, because that's always the thing I find frustrating with Toei, just in general. Like, a lot of their projects, it's like, does no one fact check this? Does no one check the timeline? Does anyone look back at the previous works? Or do they just spitball and try to work? It was kind of my issue with the Gaim Gaiden series, because a lot of that stuff didn't fit the continuity or the timeline. It was like, how do you place each of these events? And then how do you explain some of the things that were brought up in them? And it just becomes a whole giant mess. It's like, additional content's great, but when it doesn't fit into the show at all, then it just becomes a frustration.
Yeah, but I noticed that it usually occurs mostly with Rider than at least thankfully Sentai. Sentai does have a few bubbles where one of the first biggest issues is with obviously O-Ranger going where the year 1999, then it reverts back and regresses. I think Sentai's been a little bit better preserved because they went with that mentality of they're all supposed to be in some aligned continuity, where, as we obviously see, Rider past the Showa era had that disconnect. I think also Metal Heroes suffered from that in a few seasons, because not all the Metal Heroes are supposed to be in the same universe. That's why when they bring actors back, they're usually supporting roles rather than being their original role from the show they were originally the star of, per se. Because Kenji Oba would be a reoccurring actor or supporting cameo appearance in other Metal Heroes, but he would never be Gavin. So I think Toei plays it safe, ironically, with Sentai than they've done with any of their other tokusatsu properties.
I think with a lot of their properties, too, is that both Rider and Metal Hero could end up being more plot-driven and have, like, closer, tighter character arcs. So it's kind of like one of those things. I think Sentai's lighter plot threads can help it have additional material better than Rider, because it's like with Sentai being more episodic, it's easy to slip in like another episode. Whereas like with Rider, it's like, how do you split in another part of the story between two parts of the story?
Yeah, that is harder to do in some cases. I think the only time where a few of these side stories worked were like Drive did a few that actually worked well. There were a few other ones that did it, but I can't recall offhand who were able to sneak in these storylines. But Sentai, you have a lot of room with Sentai. You really could do a lot more with Sentai than they really are doing at this time. Because when you have so many of these alumni actors now being thrown into circulation, whether it's as a supporting role, whether it's at a brand new role, whether it's as a returning cameo role as their previously well-known Sentai protagonist hero, they could do a lot, and I don't know why they haven't gone with that mentality yet like the Ultra series has, in more of a nice, finer dexterity.
Yeah, I really don't have anything more to say on that. We've really summed it up.
Yeah, it's a really weird tangent. I know we went off track, but it was a good thing because I'm just looking at how Kyuranger and the team up with the Patrangers and Lupinrangers have been, as well as their previous teams up with Space Squad, and when they promoted the first Space Squad film where I'm like, if you did this, this, and this, and use this archive of actors, they wouldn't have to be worried about the fans keep thinking, oh no, the show's over, oh no, the toys aren't doing well. Just use those guys to sell your show from now on.
Yeah.
But as we digress, go check these films out. Like we said, TV Nihon Pocket Universe has them, and you're not probably ever going to see them released in North America, so torrent them while you can. And that's about it. Overall, I have nothing else to say in that regard, so sound out. Give us your plugs.
Check me out on YouTube and Twitter at SoundOut12. Posting stuff and things in the future, because I don't really know what's going up right now, since I have no idea what I've actually worked on because of when this episode is going to air.
Exactly. And I'm your host, Wheelchair21. You can always find me at Wheelchair21 on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube, whereas my Instagram is Taja_Doyle. And as you know in the credits, Hero Club for Life, everywhere you can find it. So either you can watch the credits or you can already just check it out right now. Like I said, Hero Club for Life and HeroClub.com. Information is down below in our description. And we'll see you all next week with, finally, our New York Comic-Con coverage, our rants towards Marvel Legends, Star Wars, and Hasbro's Transformers, as well as we're going to be talking a bit about Tokusatsu Spider-Man yet again. So we'll see you all next time with episode 96.
Hey, it's Wheelchair21, and thanks again for listening to an all-new episode of Los Ingobernables de Tokusatsu. If you want to hear more content or see more content from the Hero Club YouTube channel, we're going to need you to subscribe, like, comment with some feedback, and share this channel with a friend. We also would like you to check out our website, hero-club.com, and follow us on various social media outlets just by looking up Hero Club for Life, as well as the stores you see are where we shop. Anyways, thanks again, and we'll see you all next time.